I will be your host today as we delve into the world of Vikings, aiming to shatter long-held stereotypes and uncover some truly surprising facts about them. You might think we know everything about Vikings, but recent archaeological finds are literally turning our understanding of these seafaring raiders on its head. Were Vikings not the brutal warriors we imagined? Norwegian archaeologist Åge Karstein Kolberg, in his recent article, reached a conclusion that might disappoint many Viking fans. The image of blonde, muscular warriors that we're accustomed to seeing probably never existed. It turns out that Vikings, on the contrary, threaten the virtue of married women with their sophistication and well-groomed appearance. As for their singing, contemporary accounts suggest it was terrible. So why were Vikings called well-groomed heartbreakers? Did they really boast excellent manicures and even decorate their teeth? Why weren't Vikings exclusively Scandinavian? Is it true that women fought alongside men? And how have scientific discoveries changed our understanding of berserkers? Let's find out. Vikings, fashion leaders and heartbreakers. Norwegian historian and Viking expert Kim Hjarder asserts, "We are constantly finding new artifacts that largely change our knowledge about the culture of the Viking Age." In his new book, Lords of the Eidorn Sea, he reveals little-known facts that could completely overturn our perception of Vikings. It turns out that these seemingly brutal pirates were very concerned about their appearance. During excavations, archaeologists have repeatedly found tweezers, combs, toothpicks, and even tools for cleaning nails. Around the year 1000, the foreign merchant Altar Tusi, upon arriving in a city in northern Germany, observed that both men and women there colored their eyes. Furthermore, Vikings bleached their hair with lye and styled it. In the 8th century AD, Vikings were actually true fashion trendsetters. Theologian Alcuin of York even criticized the royal court of Northumbria for imitating Viking clothing and hairstyles, which was considered completely unchristian. In peacetime and when dressed up, a Viking looked more like a hipster than a wild barbarian. They conquered not with brutality, but with refined manners and appearance. They were called, just imagine, well-groomed heartbreakers, because they combed their hair every day, wore fancy clothes, and bathed every Saturday. The latter, according to one British monk, threatened the virtue of married women. Tooth decorations and dreadful singing makeup wasn't enough for them. These seemingly stern men even carved patterns into their teeth. For example, on Gotland, researchers discovered Viking-age skulls with grooves carved into their teeth. These grooves were likely filled with wax or fat mixed with dye, so the patterns would be clearly visible when a person smiled. The purpose of these, incidentally, very painful patterns is still a matter of speculation today. Perhaps it was to intimidate enemies, to protect against evil spirits that could enter through the mouth, or as a status symbol. But there's another explanation. People of that era simply found it beautiful. While Viking appearance, it seems, was quite refined, their singing, however, appears to have been problematic. Vikings themselves loved music. Archaeologists have found various musical instruments, and recently, fragments of a complexly constructed lyre were discovered in Denmark. However, Viking songs likely wouldn't have appealed to everyone. The Roman Emperor Julian the Apostate, in the 4th century AD, compared the songs of Scandinavians to the cawing of crows. And the merchant Altar Tusi, the same one who saw the painted men, described Viking songs this way: "I have never in my life heard such disgusting songs. The sounds coming from their throats resemble the barking of dogs, only even more savage." Vikings weren't exclusively Scandinavians and female warriors. Yes, you heard that right. Modern scholars are convinced Vikings and Scandinavians should by no means be equated. Vikings were not a distinct people, but merely a small group of sea raiders. The majority of Scandinavians were peaceful farmers or fishermen. The modern word Viking only came into existence in the 19th century, during the era of national romanticism in Norway. The terms used by their contemporaries to describe Vikings, marauders, raiders, pirates, typically had no ethnic connotation. In 2014, the Galloway Hoard was discovered in Scotland. It contained artifacts from Scandinavia, Britain, Ireland, continental Europe, and Turkey. The main characteristic of all Viking-related finds is their cultural diversity. Analysis of remains using the latest scientific methods confirmed a mix of Scandinavians and foreigners, with no ethnic division by rank or even gender. And here we come to the next fact that shatters stereotypes about brutal Vikings. Those who imagine Vikings exclusively as warlike men are again greatly mistaken, writes Marianne Mang, a Norwegian historian specializing in the role of women in ancient Scandinavian society. According to recent archaeological research, social differences between the sexes were almost non-existent throughout the entire pre-Christian period. This means women fought and ruled on par with men. Lagertha from the famous series Vikings is by no means an exception to the rule. Women, as Mang claims, were part of military detachments and actively participated in overseas expeditions. This is confirmed by numerous burials of women interred with weapons. The belligerence of Scandinavian women is also evidenced by ancient texts that have been overshadowed by later Christian chronicles. In particular, several sagas mention the name of Freydis Eriksdottir, who participated in the conquest of North American territories. Incidentally, it's worth noting that burials of women with weapons have also been found in Russia, belonging to a very warlike people that archaeologists today link to the Ryazan burial mounds culture. This group founded a belligerent barbarian kingdom in central Russia in the 5th century. Judging by the vast quantity of high-quality weapons, both men and women of this group were professional warriors who fought across the world. Reconsidering the Berserker myth. The central myth of the Viking legend, the myth of the supernatural strength and fearlessness of berserkers, who were considered elite warriors, is also questionable. But Norwegian archaeologist Åge Karstein Kolberg and British archaeologist Roderick Dale from the University of Nottingham, who specializes in Viking studies, strongly doubt the correctness of such an interpretation. Moreover, it turns out that the translation of the term berserker from Old Norse may not be related to bears at all. If the second syllable serker is translated as shirt, or in a broader sense, armor, then the first syllable bear can be translated as both bear and the preposition without. Old Icelandic encyclopedias from 1814 describe berserkers precisely as raiders going into battle in only their underwear and without armor. Most likely, the famous poet and saga author Snorri Sturluson also describes them in this context. Berserkers, in his opinion, were lightly clothed warriors who moved easily across the battlefield, breaking through enemy defenses. It was only in the mid-19th century that these half-naked warriors transformed into invulnerable figures, clad in bearskins, fueled by sacred rage. Everything we understand about the Viking Age today has been constructed by romantic 19th century scholars of antiquity, asserts archaeologist Roderick Dale. His Norwegian colleague Åge Karstein Kolberg points out another aspect. Berserkers were veterans with war-damaged psyches. You won't find any evidence in the sagas that berserkers were welcomed as heroes upon their return from raiding expeditions. On the contrary, they usually caused nothing but trouble for their kin. These physically scarred men suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder roamed Scandinavian settlements in a drunken state and were ready to pick a fight at any moment. If we understand this, little remains of the heroic myth of the Vikings. The fact that Vikings would be depicted as mythical warriors in future historical accounts would likely have greatly amused these hooligans, because in their time, troublemakers faced a completely different fate. They were beaten to death with sticks, or even worse, exiled to the desolate wilderness of Iceland.